And then number two, this is one of the things that I really, really preach a lot. I mean, this is because I've got such a, this speaks to my style when I shoot wildlife pictures. I've got such a affinity for nice looking backgrounds like this one. I try to tell people all the time to pay attention to the background. Little thing number one is pay attention, watch the edges, make sure limbs or other stuff aren't sticking in. I don't think I finished my thought a while ago, but again, on the watch the edges. You'd be surprised that, or you may not be surprised that when I judge photo contests for photo clubs or wherever else, how many people just, they're not paying attention and you get something stray creeping into the image, which again, when you get to the end and you're trying to select really the best of six different images, you're looking for little things like that to try to say this one's better than that one. And so that the little things are often, like I said, the little things that just people you may not be paying attention to. And then little thing number two, pay attention to the background. A background like this is a bobwhite quail calling from a fence post. This is in the spring out in the Texas Panhandle just a few years ago. And I just love the way backgrounds like that look. Really soft, really creamy. They help the subject stand, they help the subject pop out from the background. And so every chance I get, I'm looking for opportunities to shoot pictures of wildlife with backgrounds like this. And there's a way of doing it. And so a good background can add a bunch of appeal to an image. In fact, I mean, I don't expect anyone to really be involved in this. If you've got any questions on how to do it, I'd love to answer it. I'm an open book when it comes to that. But this picture right here is my latest magazine cover. Came out this month in a magazine, and the reason I knew it was going to be a cover the minute I took it, and I had people there with me that can vouch for me that when I took that picture, I said that may be the best quail shot I've ever taken. It'll be on the cover of a magazine one day. Paid attention to the background. The subject matter is beautiful all in itself. The background is just it's a secondary player in the scene. And so it really doesn't matter as much. And because it's got a really clean background, they were able to put the name of the magazine across the top above the quail's head. They were able to put all the information they needed to in the dead space, and the quail still stood out and really helped carry that magazine cover. And so here's a simple explanation of things I look for when I'm talking about backgrounds. And so if you look at example one, you can see the camera there, then the turkey, and then the trees in the background are pretty close to the turkey. You follow me so far? And then example two, camera's in the same spot, turkey's in the same spot, but the background is further away. Now, usually if I get a chance, I try to pick example number two. If I've got a choice at all to make in a picture, I usually try to figure out a way to make the background be as far away from the subject as I can. Because when you do that, that's how you get those really soft backgrounds like you saw in the previous picture or the previous two pictures. You get backgrounds like that. The background is relatively far away from the subject, and because of a couple of camera settings I'll go over in a minute, then you get those really, really, really soft out of focus backgrounds like that. The uh, if there was a bush right behind that quail, that bush wouldn't be very much out of focus. And so a lot of times, well, let me save that thought for just in a minute. Let me go through this first. And so background softness, here's my best way of explaining it, is the function between the distance from you to the subject and the distance of the subject to the background. So in example one, the background wouldn't be as out of focus as what it would in background two. And then it's also the further the subject is from the background, the softer the background becomes when using a wide open aperture. And that's the key. A wide open aperture, f4, f5.6, whatever, f6.3, whatever your lens will do. If you open it wide open and you seek those backgrounds like that, then you get the results like I showed you in the previous two pictures. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, how in the world can I make the background move? There's just no way of doing it. And it's true, you can't. But if you're doing backyard hummingbird setups or songbird setups, you can choose where you put, your feeders and then have them relatively far from the back fence or the background of the bushes in the back of your yard or wherever else and be able to manipulate where the background is whenever you're taking pictures. A lot of times, and you may or may not be surprised to hear this, a lot of times when you're in the outdoors, uh, if you'll just do a couple of simple things, sometimes I'm thinking about we've got someone in the webinar today that was with me on the Smoky Mountains trip last spring, about a year ago, and we saw a bear in the field. And from one angle, you didn't get that good clean background, but if you move 5 feet to the left, you could change the background just because it's a different perspective of where you're standing. You change the background, and then the background becomes a whole lot softer. So a lot of times it may be just moving yourself left or right just a little bit, or it may just be moving yourself just down. If you go to I think about a time when I was in Yellowstone a few years ago, and there was a bear on the side of the road, and every single photographer there was standing up taking pictures of it, and they were shooting pictures of this bear on a down angle, a slightly down angle, wasn't much. And then all we had to do just to get a different background and get a different look in the picture was sit down on the ground, just get lower. And so we didn't have to change our perspective by much, but we just had to change our perspective because sometimes when you do move left, move right, the background distance and relative to the animal sometimes will move away. So always be on the lookout for that kind of stuff too. Now, I'll be the first to admit sometimes you have no control over it. I think there was a picture early on. Let me go back and find it of that toucan. And that's a good illustrative picture too of the toucan in Costa Rica. Uh, you know, I would have loved it if that tree wasn't right behind it, but the toucan landed where the toucan was going to land, and so we took it anyway because it's a beautiful bird. But you can see in that example right there how the tree immediately behind the toucan is more in focus, but as you get to those trees back behind the toucan that are in the distance, see how they become out of focus? And it's just it's a difference between the relative distance between the you and the subject from the background. And so always be on the lookout for how you can line yourself up differently and be able to achieve a lot cleaner backgrounds. And again, and that's just what I was telling you. That's a stylistic look. Let me get back to the pictures where we were earlier. That's a stylistic look. But if I'm ever judging a picture and I see backgrounds like that, would someone made the conscious effort to do that? I'm kind of a sucker for pictures like that and backgrounds like that. And I'm a sucker for Bob Quill as you can see too. Okay, let me catch us back up to where we were. And again, if you have any questions as I go along, feel free to put them in the chat or wait till the end and you can turn on your audio and ask them. Got to get a drink of coffee. Yeah, here's another good example. Tree frog on a flower. You can tell here I use really shallow depth of field. I just like that look where one eye is in focus, but the far eye is not. And that's okay to me. As long as that near eye that's looking at you is in focus, that's all I was really worried about. And then if you look at the toes of the tree frog, it's out of focus as well. And so that picture right there, now this was a controlled situation. This was a macro setup we did. And so you were able to move around to the frog and get the kind of background you wanted. And in this case, I got the guy to set up the flower and set up the frog where you could achieve this look pretty easily. But again, it's just being mindful of how far the background is away from the subject. And this is out at Redlands Ranch. We do a reptile experience when we do that workshop, and this was one of the snakes we photographed. But again, I actually put in a mound of dirt with rocks on it, made a habitat. So if we did do rattlesnake pictures, we could set the rattlesnake on top of of the uh, the mound, and then you could shoot it with a really clean background like this, but you're also shooting it where you're not having to lay down and get eye level with it. We bring the snakes up eye level to you, and so that way you get these good soft backgrounds. But everything about that background, when I designed where that mound of dirt was going to be and knowing what we're going to use it for, was designed so you could accomplish that kind of background. I had to, because the trees are probably 50, 60, 70 yards in the distance, and you're able to get that really soft, kind of creamy background. So of all the things I talk about today, of the 5 things, and I think we're only on number 2 right now, of all the things I talk about today, this one right here, I think will add the biggest amount of pop to your photos. If you just keep this piece in mind whenever you're shooting wildlife pictures and always thinking about the background and always thinking about what's the background going to look like, don't accept what you have. Move left, move right, get lower, maybe even get a little higher if you need to. But either way, as long as you're thinking about the background and shooting with a wide open aperture, you can achieve stuff like this as well.